Let me take you back a few years. I remember it clearly. It was a chilly autumn evening, and I was staring out the window at the old oak tree in my front yard. Its branches were bare, shaking in the wind, and I suddenly felt something heavy settle in my chest. I had been living alone for a few years by then, and for the most part, I thought I had it all figured out. I was proud of my independence, confident I could handle anything that came my way. But that night, sitting alone with just the ticking clock for company, I felt an unexpected ache. Loneliness, sure, but more than that, it was a sense of vulnerability. It wasn't that I doubted my abilities, but I started thinking about all the small, overlooked things I was doing, or maybe not doing, that could make life harder, or even risky for someone like me, living alone in their later years. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself I was just getting sentimental, but that feeling kept nudging me, urging me to take a closer look at my routines and habits. I remember one particular evening when I nearly slipped in the kitchen while rushing to answer the phone. I laughed it off at the time, but later, sitting back down, I wondered how different the outcome could have been if I hadn't caught myself. That moment was a wake-up call. It got me thinking about the little things we might ignore, not realizing they can snowball into big problems when we're on our own. I want to share some of what I've learned since that evening. It's not just about keeping ourselves safe. It's about making sure we can continue to enjoy this stage of life in comfort and peace. So if you'll let me, I'd like to tell you some of the things I've discovered we should avoid when living alone, to make life not only safer, but also a little happier. These are small adjustments, but trust me, they make a world of difference. Number 1. Avoid ignoring health checkups and appointments. One of the first things I realized was that when you live alone, it's easy to postpone health appointments or skip them altogether. I was guilty of this, especially in the beginning. I'd think, I feel fine, or I don't want to bother with the doctor today. But the truth is, little things can escalate quickly when there's no one around to notice subtle changes. A friend of mine, Harold, is a good example. Harold is about as stubborn as they come, always brushed off checkups as a waste of time. But one evening, he felt a strange dizziness. He ignored it, thinking it was just dehydration. It wasn't until his daughter came for a visit that she noticed his speech was slightly slurred. She insisted on taking him to the hospital, where they discovered he'd had a small stroke. Had he gone unchecked, things could have been much worse. Regular checkups and appointments aren't just about addressing issues, they're about prevention, giving us a safety net when we're on our own. Whether it's your annual physical, eye checkup, or just a visit with the dentist, keeping up with these appointments can prevent minor issues from becoming major problems. Number 2. Avoid isolation and lack of social connections. Living alone can be wonderfully peaceful, but it can also be easy to slip into isolation without even realizing it. I'll admit, I'm a bit of a homebody. After a few days without any calls or visits, I start feeling that familiar pang of loneliness. While there's nothing wrong with enjoying solitude, it's essential not to let social connections fade away. One day, I got a call from Alice, an old friend who had been living alone even longer than me. I hadn't heard from her in months, and when I picked up the phone, she said, "I just realized I hadn't spoken to anyone in almost 2 weeks." She sounded surprised and a little shaken, and I remember thinking how easy it is to let days pass by in silence. That call made me realize that maintaining connections, whether with family, friends, or neighbors, wasn't just about filling the silence. It's about staying engaged with the world, sharing laughs, and keeping each other accountable. Making an effort to reach out, even just a quick phone call or a chat with a neighbor, helps break up the solitude. Joining local groups or volunteering, even if it's just once a week, can also do wonders for keeping the mind active and the spirit high. Living alone doesn't have to mean being alone. Number 3. Avoid neglecting safety precautions in the home. After that near slip in my kitchen, I began paying closer attention to home safety. Little things I'd never thought twice about, like leaving that throw rug by the door or using a stepladder to reach high cabinets, suddenly seemed like risks. When you're on your own, even a minor accident can become a big issue if there's no one to help immediately. I remember talking to my friend Jim, who lives a few states over. Jim is a bit of a do-it-yourselfer and always liked keeping his tools in the garage where he'd have to climb a small step stool to reach them. One day, he slipped and twisted his ankle pretty badly. It took him nearly an hour to crawl to the phone to call for help. Since then, he's reorganized his home, placing essential items within easy reach and getting rid of hazards like loose rugs and wobbly furniture. Taking small steps like improving lighting in hallways, adding railings to stairs, and keeping emergency contacts on speed dial can prevent accidents and help us feel more secure. The fewer risks in the house, the more confident and comfortable we can feel living on our own. Number 4. Avoid skipping proper nutrition and hydration. Living alone, it's easy to fall into unhealthy eating habits. I used to think that as long as I felt full, I was doing fine. Some days, I'd skip a meal or just snack on whatever was easiest. But I noticed I didn't have as much energy, and it became clear that I wasn't giving my body what it needed. I remember a conversation with my friend Margaret, a lively lady with a love for cooking. But after her husband passed, she found it harder to cook for just one person. Her meals became simpler, often just toast and tea or a can of soup. One winter, she got sick with the flu, and because her body was already low on nutrients, it took her a long time to recover. After that, she made a commitment to herself to eat a balanced diet, even if it meant cooking more than she'd eat in one sitting and saving the leftovers. Eating well doesn't have to mean cooking gourmet meals every day, but including fresh fruits, vegetables, and plenty of water in our daily routine is crucial. Keeping a few simple, nutritious options on hand, like yogurt, nuts, or pre-washed salad greens, can make it easier to stay healthy. Drinking enough water is also essential, especially since, as we age, we may not feel thirst as strongly. Staying hydrated and eating balanced meals can keep our energy levels up and help prevent a host of health issues. Number 5. Avoid ignoring the importance of a daily routine. When I first started living alone, I enjoyed the freedom of doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. But as the days turned into months, I found that without a routine, my days felt aimless. It's one of those subtle things that can affect your mood and energy without you even realizing it. My friend Robert once shared a similar experience. After retiring and moving to his own place, he found himself staying up late, waking up whenever he felt like it, and often spending the day in his pajamas. It sounded relaxing at first, but after a while, he admitted he felt restless and low on energy. He decided to set a schedule, getting up at the same time every day, having breakfast, taking a morning walk, and setting aside time for his hobbies. It transformed his days, giving him a sense of purpose and structure. Creating a daily routine doesn't mean giving up spontaneity. It's about setting a rhythm that helps us feel grounded and active. Whether it's a morning coffee by the window, reading after lunch, or taking an evening walk, having small daily rituals can bring comfort, stability, and even a sense of joy to our lives. Number 6. Avoid underestimating the benefits of physical activity. When you live alone, it's easy to become sedentary without even noticing it. But staying physically active, even in small ways, is one of the best things we can do for ourselves. I remember when I stopped walking as much after moving out on my own, thinking I'd get back into it eventually. But eventually, kept getting pushed further and further back, and I started feeling stiff and sluggish. Then there's my neighbor, Bill, who's in his 70s and insists on taking a daily walk, rain or shine. "It's my insurance policy," he jokes. And he's right. Staying active doesn't have to mean hitting the gym or doing anything extreme. A simple daily walk, some gentle stretching, or even a bit of gardening can keep our bodies stronger, improve balance, and reduce the risk of falls. Plus, moving our bodies regularly is good for our mental health, helping us feel more alert and positive. Avoiding long periods of inactivity and finding ways to keep moving each day is something I wish I'd prioritized earlier. Even now, when I don't feel like going out, I remind myself how good I feel afterward, both physically and mentally. Number 7. Avoid overspending or falling into financial neglect. When you're on your own, managing finances becomes a personal responsibility. I'll admit, in the beginning, I didn't pay close attention to my expenses. But when I started noticing that I was spending a bit too much on small things, an extra gadget here, a special treat there, I realized how quickly it could add up. I've known others who found themselves in tricky situations. For example, my friend Emily almost signed up for an expensive magazine subscription without realizing the renewal cost. A year later, she was billed again, and it was a hassle to cancel. Now, she's careful with subscriptions and checks her bank statements regularly. When we're older and living alone, it's important to be mindful of spending, especially since our income might be fixed. Reviewing expenses monthly, cutting unnecessary subscriptions, and setting up simple budgets can help us avoid financial stress. We don't want to reach a point where we feel constrained or anxious about money. Keeping finances in check gives peace of mind and the freedom to enjoy life without unnecessary worry. Number 8. Avoid neglecting home maintenance and repairs. One thing I learned the hard way was that small home issues can quickly turn into big problems if left unattended. Living alone, it's easy to overlook little things, a dripping faucet, a drafty window, or a loose railing. But when I neglected some minor repairs, I found myself with bigger, costlier issues down the line. My friend George experienced something similar. He noticed a small leak under his bathroom sink, but didn't think it was urgent. A few months later, the leak had caused water damage, requiring a more extensive and expensive fix. Since then, he keeps a checklist of small repairs and tackles them one at a time to stay on top of things. Even if you're not handy, there are affordable services that can help with home maintenance. Keeping our homes in good condition isn't just about comfort, it's about safety. When our living space is well kept, it becomes a place of security and ease, allowing us to truly relax and enjoy our independence. Number 9. Avoid relying solely on memory for important tasks. As the years go by, it's natural that our memory may not be as sharp as it once was. I used to pride myself on remembering birthdays, doctor's appointments, and all the little details of daily life without needing to write anything down. But one day, I missed a critical medication refill because I simply forgot to check my supply. That experience taught me that it's wise to find ways to help keep track of essential things, rather than relying solely on memory. My friend Claire, a retired school teacher, keeps a small notebook where she writes down everything she needs to remember, from appointments to grocery lists. She swears by it, saying that it's a small action that gives her peace of mind. Other friends of mine use reminder apps on their phones or even set up alarms for important tasks. Whether it's keeping a notebook, using a calendar, or setting reminders, writing things down can be a great help. When living alone, it becomes even more important to stay organized with things like medications, bills, and appointments. It's a simple habit that can prevent small mistakes from piling up and adding stress to our daily lives. Number 10. Avoid keeping an excessive cluttered space. One thing I realized over time is how easy it is for clutter to accumulate, especially when living alone. There's no one else to question that extra set of dishes or the pile of magazines I hadn't gotten around to reading. But eventually, I started noticing how the clutter affected me. It made cleaning harder, and it was a source of unnecessary stress whenever I looked around my home. I remember visiting my friend Susan, who had recently downsized after her husband passed away. She told me how liberating it felt to let go of things she no longer needed. She kept only items with a purpose or special meaning, and the difference in her home was remarkable. It felt calm, open, and welcoming. Seeing her transformation encouraged me to do the same, gradually sorting through my belongings and donating or discarding what I no longer used. Having a tidy, uncluttered space can bring a sense of peace and makes it easier to move around safely. There's also something wonderful about having a home that feels light and organized, where everything has its place. It doesn't mean we have to give up cherished items, just that we keep what truly matters and let go of what doesn't. Number 11. Avoid being without a reliable emergency plan. One evening, I experienced a minor gas leak in the kitchen. Thankfully, I smelled it right away and was able to act, but the situation got me thinking, what if I hadn't been so alert? Since then, I've taken steps to ensure I'm prepared in case of an emergency. My friend Martha shared her own story with me. She had a fall in her garden and was unable to reach her phone. She was there for hours before a neighbor noticed. After that, she invested in a wearable alert button that could call for help with a simple press. Since then, she's felt more confident and secure, knowing that help is just a button away if she needs it. Having an emergency plan is essential. Whether it's keeping a list of emergency contacts by the phone, investing in a personal alert device, or making sure neighbors know to check on us if something seems off, these small steps can make a big difference. Even having a simple exit plan in case of fire or flood can be crucial. Living alone shouldn't mean being unprepared for the unexpected. Number 12. Avoid ignoring the importance of self-care and mental health. Living alone brings unique challenges, and it can sometimes feel lonely or overwhelming. For a long time, I thought I was supposed to tough it out and deal with things on my own. But I've come to realize that it's essential to prioritize my mental and emotional well-being. One friend of mine, Frank, told me how much a small hobby brought joy back into his life. He started painting, something he hadn't done since he was young. For him, it was a way to pass the time and a creative outlet that lifted his spirits. Inspired by him, I began keeping a journal where I write down my thoughts and feelings, and I found it incredibly helpful. Self-care isn't just about pampering oneself. It's about acknowledging that our mental health needs attention too. Engaging in hobbies, staying connected with loved ones, and sometimes even talking with a counselor can make all the difference. It's perfectly normal to seek support, whether through close friends, family, or professional help. Taking care of our inner life allows us to feel more at peace and enjoy our independence fully. Number 13. Avoid excessive screen time or getting too dependent on television. When you live alone, it's tempting to turn to the television or computer for company. I used to leave the TV on for hours, thinking it helped fill the silence. But after a while, I realized I was spending too much time glued to the screen and missing out on other activities that could enrich my life. My neighbor Laura told me how she had replaced her TV habits with reading and gardening. She started small, but soon found herself more engaged in her days and happier in general. Inspired by her, I've also begun setting limits on my screen time. I now make a conscious effort to balance watching shows with other activities like reading, playing cards, or working on puzzles. Using television or screens in moderation can be enjoyable, but it's easy to let it become a crutch for boredom. When we engage in a variety of activities, we keep our minds sharper, stay more physically active, and find new sources of enjoyment that enrich our lives. Number 14. Avoid disregarding personal security. Living alone, I've become more aware of personal security. Little things I didn't think twice about before, like locking doors or leaving a light on at night, have become routines. I used to feel safe no matter what. But over time, I realized that taking precautions could make a big difference in my peace of mind. My friend Tom once shared a story about a scare he had when someone tried to enter his home late at night. Fortunately, he'd installed motion sensor lights, and the would-be intruder ran off. Since then, he's been more vigilant about his home's security. Inspired by his experience, I installed a few extra lights around my place and make sure to double-check all the locks before going to bed. Even small actions like keeping doors locked, not opening the door to strangers, or investing in a simple security system can help us feel safer. Taking these precautions doesn't mean we're paranoid. It simply means we're respecting our need for a secure, peaceful living environment. Number 15. Avoid neglecting social connections and community engagement. Living alone can sometimes lead to a feeling of isolation, especially if we don't make an effort to stay connected with others. When I first started living by myself, I noticed that my social circle began to shrink. Friends were busy with their own lives, and it was easy to slip into a routine where days passed without seeing anyone. But I quickly realized how much I missed those simple, everyday conversations and interactions. My friend Harold, a retired school principal, found himself in a similar situation. After his wife passed, he felt alone and didn't know how to fill his time. One day, he decided to start volunteering at a local community center. He began teaching a basic literacy class for adults, and through it, he made new friends and rekindled a sense of purpose. Harold often tells me that his volunteer work gave him back his spark. Social connections are essential for our well-being, and finding ways to engage with others, whether it's through a local club, a church group, or a volunteer opportunity can bring a sense of belonging. Reaching out to friends or family members regularly, even if it's just a phone call or a quick visit, helps us feel connected to the world. Loneliness is common for people living alone, but staying active in the community can make a world of difference. Number 16. Avoid letting your home become stale or neglecting fresh air and natural light. I learned the importance of fresh air and natural light the hard way. I used to keep my windows closed most of the time, especially in the colder months, thinking it would save on heating. But after a while, the house felt stuffy, and I noticed my mood wasn't as upbeat as usual. There's something about having fresh air and light in a home that brings it to life. My friend Linda is a perfect example of this. She has a small garden in her backyard and loves opening her windows every morning to let in sunlight and fresh air. She told me that it makes her feel like her home is breathing. Inspired by her, I started doing the same, opening the curtains, letting in a breeze, and spending more time near the windows. It's amazing how much of a difference a little light and air can make. Letting sunlight in and allowing fresh air to circulate doesn't just improve the home's atmosphere, it also boosts our mental and physical health. If you're in a place where fresh air is hard to come by, consider indoor plants. They help clean the air and bring a bit of nature indoors. Small actions like these keep our living spaces vibrant and welcoming. Number 17. Avoid relying on just one person for support. One thing I've come to understand is the importance of having a reliable support network. Early on, I relied heavily on my daughter for help with anything I needed. But one day, she told me she felt overwhelmed. It hit me then that putting too much on one person, even someone as close as family, can strain the relationship. My friend Nancy has a different approach. She's built a network of friends, neighbors, and even former coworkers who support each other in small ways. They check in on each other, share rides, and exchange help with errands or tasks around the house. She calls it her village, and it has brought her a sense of security and community that she values deeply. Having a few people you can count on, rather than relying on a single individual, makes life easier for everyone involved. It's comforting to know you're not putting all the weight on one person's shoulders. Building a small circle of support means you're prepared for anything that comes up and can offer the same help in return when others need it. Number 18. Avoid disregarding physical safety in everyday activities. After moving out on my own, I realized how important it was to pay attention to physical safety, especially with daily routines. Simple things like bending down to pick something up or reaching for an item on a high shelf could easily lead to a fall if I wasn't careful. I once had a close call in the bathroom when I slipped on a wet tile, and it reminded me that being cautious isn't overreacting. It's just sensible. My friend Jack, a retired firefighter, has a few helpful habits. He installed grab bars in his bathroom, keeps nightlights in the hallways, and avoids slippery throw rugs. Think of it like setting up safety nets, he once told me. You hope you'll never need them, but they're there just in case. Taking precautions around the house, like adding non-slip mats, keeping things within easy reach, and avoiding risky moves, helps us stay safe and prevents injuries. After all, living alone means we're the ones responsible for our safety, so it's wise to reduce hazards where we can. Number 19. Avoid becoming overly dependent on medication. Medication can be a lifeline, but living alone means we must manage it carefully. After a while, I noticed that I was reaching for pain medication more frequently than I'd like. It was a habit I'd developed without thinking about it, and I realized that, without anyone else around to notice, it was easy for it to go unchecked. My friend Carol shared a similar story. She had become reliant on sleep aids, which eventually affected her mood and energy. She decided to talk to her doctor, who helped her gradually reduce her dependence on the pills. Now she relies more on calming evening routines and herbal teas, and she's sleeping better than ever. Taking medication responsibly is important, especially when there's no one else to monitor it. Sticking to the prescribed doses, asking the doctor about any concerns, and being mindful of over-the-counter medications helps us avoid unintended side effects or dependency issues. It's one more way we can take control of our health while living independently. Number 20. Avoid letting life become too serious. Remember to enjoy small moments. Living alone has taught me to appreciate the little things, but there was a time when I forgot how to enjoy life's small pleasures. In the early days, I was so focused on keeping things in order and sticking to my routines that I overlooked the importance of taking time to just enjoy myself. One of the best lessons I learned was from my friend Betty. She always finds joy in the simplest activities: a good cup of coffee, a favorite old movie, or spending time with her cat. Life doesn't have to be all work and worry, she'd remind me with a smile. She taught me the value of slowing down and savoring the small, peaceful moments that make life rich. Whether it's listening to music, baking, or taking a leisurely stroll, finding time for small moments of joy is essential. It helps us remember that living alone doesn't mean living without happiness. Making room for the things that bring us a sense of contentment is a wonderful way to celebrate each day and keep life vibrant. Number 21. Avoid losing sight of gratitude for the life you're living. When I look back at my journey of living alone, I realize that it hasn't always been easy. There have been challenges, surprises, and moments of loneliness. But what I've found through it all is a deep appreciation for the small victories, the little comforts, and the memories that fill my home. Every new day brings its own quiet joy: a peaceful morning with a hot cup of tea, a phone call from an old friend, or the sunlight warming the room just right. My neighbor Emily once shared a wonderful habit with me. Every evening, she writes down 3 things she's grateful for that day. Sometimes it's a simple meal she enjoyed, or a favorite song she heard on the radio. Other times, it's a memory of her late husband that brings a smile. This small act of gratitude gives her a sense of peace and reminds her of the beauty in life, even when it's quiet or challenging. Living alone can feel daunting, but embracing gratitude helps us see the richness in the life we've built. It's a gentle reminder that, although we're on our own, we're still surrounded by blessings, both big and small. As I sit here reflecting on all these experiences and lessons, I realize that living alone as an older person is a journey that requires courage, resilience, and most importantly, a sense of humor. We learn to adapt, to find joy in simplicity, and to cherish the independence we've gained. I know it's not always easy, and some days are harder than others. But each step we take to make our homes safer, our hearts lighter, and our connections stronger is a testament to the beautiful life we're living. I hope that these insights gathered from my own life and the lives of friends like Harold, Claire, and Betty bring you comfort and inspiration. Remember, living alone doesn't mean facing life alone. It's a chance to embrace our independence, to nurture our spirits, and to find companionship in the community around us, even if it's just a smile from a neighbor or a quick chat with a friend. I would love to hear from you. What are your tips and tricks for living alone? Are there habits or routines that bring you peace or make your days easier? Please leave a comment below and share your experiences. Together we can build a circle of wisdom and support, reminding each other that we're never truly alone on this journey.